Welcome to a new round of future Hamburg Talks on hydrogen. My name is Heinrich Klingberg. Due to the actual situation we have for Corona, we're doing this in a virtual room. The guests today are Dr. Georg Böttner, Head Executive Board Projects of HHLA, Hamburg Harbour and Storage and Logistics Company, and Dr. Reinhard Lüken, Chief Executive Manager of German Association for Shipbuilding and Maritime Technology. So we have both ships and also the land side in the port. And the objective today is to reflect upon the role of hydrogen in the harbour economy, be it on the general strategic orientation, but also what are the projects that are already going on, specifically here in Hamburg, in the shipbuilding sector, in the port logistics, and also what steps need to be done to get a sustainable hydrogen economy in the ports. What are is the framework that need to be changed? What are the legal aspects? What are the technical steps that need to be done? Thanks for the participants to be with us here today, and I would like to start with Dr. Lüken. As the German Association for Shipbuilding and Maritime Technology, you certainly represent a wide range of industry. There's shipyards, there's shipbuilding, there's the ports and logistics sector as well. All of these are subject to fast and substantial change in the next years and are confronted with major demands. So when it comes to, let's say, to the fuels that are being used in ships, we will probably go into the details a bit more later. But I would believe that the requirements you are having has a huge impact, especially on the fuels and the CO2 emissions they are having. So is there already something that you could tell us about? What are we heading for? What are the main drivers here?
You're absolutely right. Fuel is for sure the core question that we need to tackle. We also need to tackle the whole system ship. We need to be more energy efficient. So there's still also some room to make to really optimize energy efficiency. But the climate goals that we have outlined before, particularly if you want to have the ambitious EU goal, climate neutrality by 2050, that will only be possible with fuel change. Now, the problem is that until recently, we basically had the one-size-fits-all fuel, heavy fuel oil. And I was referring before to the problem of air pollution that we tackled with on sulfur and nitrogen. With that, we have taken a major step in the industry away from the one-size-fits-all fuel solution towards a whole range of different types of fuels. And for the future, tackling climate change, that will be even more so the case. We will have a whole range of different solutions, and that will depend very much on what type of trade you're engaged in. Hydrogen will for sure play an important role, maybe even as primary fuel for short distances, but of course as a energy storage for different e-fuels, for renewable fuels of different types like ammoniac, but methanol and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So you've illustrated very nicely the framework we are having and also started to kind of define what role hydrogen could play on ships specifically. Now, Dr. Böttner, when it comes to the harbour infrastructure, to the harbour economy, we see that not only Hamburg, but other ports in Europe and worldwide have discovered hydrogen as an important future topic and are really actively positioning themselves in this sector. When we have a look at your company, at HHLA, what applications do you focus on? Be it on the operational side, in the port terminals, or also I know that you are discussing vehicles and so on. Could you give us some insight in your plans?
We agree. So what other competitors are doing mirrors our opinion in respect to hydrogen, because in our opinion, hydrogen-powered equipment is going to play a role, especially in heavy-duty logistics. And even though it might not match the energy efficiency of battery-powered vehicles, but it has some striking advantages. One of which is you don't need heavy batteries in order to, which might reduce workload of such vehicles. You can charge it or you can operate it on a 24/7 basis without any major charging interruptions. And if it comes to refilling, it's done within minutes and not within hours. And it's independent of our, how I put it, shaking electric grid. So if it comes to, as I said, logistics and port operations needs reliability, because we want to serve ships, we want to serve logistic chains. And in our opinion, green hydrogen as an energy carrier can deliver that.
So, Dr. Lüken, when it comes, we heard from Dr. Böttner that there will be a change, especially in the logistics sector, with hydrogen as a fuel. When we come back to the ships, and you already mentioned before that probably we will have kind of specific roles for, be it on the one hand hydrogen or be it derivatives of hydrogen in the harbor sector. So synthetic methanol could, for example, be a relevant topic for big ships when converting them. It seems the system question is still largely open and there's only first discussions. When it comes to inland waterways, we have a fine example with Electra, which is a push boat that will operate between Berlin and Hamburg quite soon. And we know for harbor ferries, for example, at Harbour here in Hamburg, or in Norway, the US, or in France, that they will run on hydrogen as well. So first, from the projects that have started, what have you learned about the roles for the specific fuels? And would you expect that you will potentially have a clearer view on the systems in the next years to come?
Tricky question. What we have learned, I think, is really the whole operational environment that you need. So, and this is also maybe the most important thing that we need to take our next steps. We need to bring in more ships into operation and learn from practice, because it's fantastic if you are leading in research, but at the end of the day, if you want to make an impact on the total emission, of course these ships have to enter into operation, and there we need to learn more. I think what we have seen is that there is not the one solution that fits all. I think that's maybe the most important message that we have taken from the attempts so far. There will be a whole range of solutions. That's the key point. And we need to be much smarter in the future than we have been in the past, where we had this one-size-fits-all approach in shipping. I think all solutions that you see today will probably also be on the table in the future.
Yeah, okay. But you wouldn't see a specific role model like, for example, methanol or synthetic diesel for big ships, while hydrogen is more for inland waterways?
Yeah, certainly. No, there you're right. As primary fuel, I think hydrogen is not really feasible for long journeys. Therefore, we clearly see this split probably, as you mentioned, that for the inland waterways, the primary fuel solution is an option. For ocean-going vessels, long distance, intercontinental trade, large ships in particular, of course, this gets much more difficult, and their derivatives is more likely to move on.
I would assume that probably you have a perfect environment specifically because with the specific tasks you have to fulfill every day, there's different requirements in the logistics sectors. There's not only the trucks, but other devices, other equipment also. And of course, there's the question of the hydrogen being available. And I understand that in the port of Hamburg, we will have a big production line latest in 2025. So you could also have a near and close supply of green hydrogen that you could use for the fleet that you would have in vehicles, for example, then.
That is exactly true. In Hamburg, the surrounding is really good because we not only have the production line of green hydrogen, which is going to develop, I guess, by 2025. But we have also plans of the Gasnetz Hamburg to build a dedicated hydrogen grid or pipeline infrastructure. And that all is necessary in order to make hydrogen equipment, especially in the logistics sector, ensure that we can run it on an economic basis. Because we don't want to replace one fossil fuel with another one. We want to make sure that the Port of Hamburg is greenhouse gas free by 2040 and have ambitious steps in between.
I would think again that specifically this ecosystem that we are going to set up with the supply of green hydrogen is really a benefit, specifically when you're in the harbor using that hydrogen. But when it comes to Dr. Lüken and the ships again, you were mentioning that we will have different innovative fuels, at least the bigger lot of them based on hydrogen itself or hydrogen derivatives. When you're using that for the ship, that will not only be the full propulsion system probably, but it will also be the supply of electricity and heating or cooling while the ship is berthing in the harbor. Is that the first solution that is going to come, or would you think that the industry is heading for the full genset then?
Yeah, also there, probably you will see everything. The question is, what will be the dominant element? I think that's very difficult to see. Personally, I think that electrification, for instance, while or during port stay, which is very much under discussion in recent 1 or 2 years, is only a small step because production of energy on board by the vessel itself is always more efficient because you don't lose so much energy in between. And of course, this step is mainly done for air pollution reasons. You don't want the air pollution, not so much the greenhouse gases, downtown. You want to avoid that because, of course, it's a health issue. Switching to cleaner fuels will, of course, solve the same problem, and then you don't need to have that infrastructure double. So that's why I'm not so personally not so much convinced that making this a widespread application makes too much sense. I think focusing on the fuel change could actually be a more thorough solution that takes us where we want. But of course, there's, again, as I said at the beginning, this is really essential. You will see everything. You will see all the different solutions because the requirements for the different applications are very different.
But then again, we are probably discussing mostly the fuel and not operational-wise, is it only in the harbor or is it throughout the whole journey? But when it comes to the question of the fuels, then we basically, for reasons of safety and uniform standards, there's a lot of regulations, both internationally and in Europe. Inland waterways on the one hand and seagoing ships on the other hand. So we have European law and we have the International Maritime Organization, IMO. I know you are in discussions with both of them, with the first applications of ships. And that would be definitely a prerequisite for using these clean fuels. So can you give us some first-hand information what the status there is, and would you expect that we will have a fitting legal framework in the coming years from both European law, probably that's a bit closer, and IMO?
Yeah, indeed. I think that probably the regulations within the EU could move faster simply because you have less member states involved in the regulatory body, which is CESNI in the case of inland waterways. Yes, we are a recognized organization in CESNI as well as through our European organization, but we are actually taking that mandate for our European organization within the IMO. Both organizations today have not included yet hydrogen on their work program. So that clearly indicates that the processes are not super high speed. And we also we know from the past, if I look to the IGF code that enabled the use of LNG in other ship types, which of course is also a very important intermediate step into this whole energy transition for the maritime economy. That has taken 15 years. And again, it was a pretty small step. So we really need to speed up. And of course, the IMO is well aware of the pressure that it has to deliver. And we, as with our European Association, as I said before, we are clearly promoting an alternative fuel acceleration program. But still, that's a major challenge. And whether we will be able to have clear regulations before 2025 on even the most forthcoming ones, I'm not sure. On methanol, we have already something. So things are moving. We should also not be too negative. We are making progress. Low flashpoint fuel diesel is under preparation. But again, the full range, that still requires a lot of work. And I think what we need to do is we probably need to put also there more resources to work on the regulatory side. Yeah. We see that there's always a shortage of manpower or person power, should I say. I don't know.
I'd like to add from a port side of view, regulation comes first. Because it's not only the ships who needs to be adopted, but also the bunkering infrastructure needs to be provided. And if we add like the first 14 years or 15 years for the regulation, and afterwards we need the first ships coming into movement, and we need to build the infrastructure, that's simply not fast enough. So we need the regulation quickly.
Yeah. But if we compare the process for LNG, for example, with the process for methanol, then at least from my point of view, we have sped up a lot. So that has become a lot more dynamic. So let's hope for hydrogen to become at least as dynamic as with methanol.
The future energy will be possibly based on hydrogen to a large extent. So we see that, and we are preparing, like all German seaports in general, and Hamburg is preparing, and HHLA is preparing as well. But what Dr. Lüken just mentioned, to have a look at what form of hydrogen is going to play what role is decisive. Because if it comes to import and distribution, and import, it's not the full story, distribution is a major part as well. It makes a difference whether it's hydrogen in compressed form, in liquefied form. It's on an organic carrier like LOHC, or it's whatever. In ammonia or methanol. So it makes a huge difference. And so we need to establish what form of hydrogen is going to be used at what industry, and after what's the regulations therefore, and then we can build the infrastructure necessary. What we decided at HHLA in order to speed up this process, we start small and try to get first-hand experience on all the different forms. As Mr. Lüken was telling, and you as well, methanol and ammonia is kind of an established commodity. However, it will be a different scale if we use these commodities for the purpose of decarbonizing our industry. And again, we partnered up with major players of the industry, looking into organic carriers, looking into liquefied hydrogen, compressed hydrogen, joined on a regional basis within the Northern strategy, Northern hydrogen strategy, and try, as I said, get first-hand experience on a small scale in order to speed up the process.
So I have two very brief questions for you, both please to answer. One regarding the obstacles. Which, from your opinion, is the most relevant one, and which priority would you see to tackle with that problem? And the second is just a recommendation for the city of Hamburg. What can the city of Hamburg do to support this transition process? What would be your view on that?
What is the biggest hurdle? I would assume that we need to get the market going. We need to create the demand. I think we have a certain advantage in our European shipbuilding industry, in Germany especially, because we are delivering products to high-end customers. So with the strong role in cruise, but also for the super yachts, there you have customers that are maybe more sensitive to the whole topic of emissions. That's why we were able to already advance more than others. But if you want to make this technology that we've developed also available to a more broader application, then of course you need to have customers that are prepared to invest, and that's a big challenge. And I think at the end of the day, that will probably not work without the role of government to provide certain incentives to bring these investments forward. By the way, if I may allow you, you said it's the last question, but it's an important topic for me. You mentioned logistics. The ship itself is, of course, a key element in that logistics as well. So we will never produce enough green hydrogen in Germany for what we need in terms of energy amounts. So we will always have to import energy, and that means we will need to have LNG, liquefied hydrogen carriers. That's not a trivial task to organize. The Japanese have built one. I think we should also start building our own liquefied hydrogen tankers to make this start, to learn in practical terms what it takes also on the operational side. Hamburg, I think Hamburg can certainly facilitate all these challenges that we have in the different elements of the maritime economy. I think Hamburg is the maritime capital of Germany, even if some other cities might not fully agree with that term, but I believe it's so. And of course, we have also a strong aeronautics cluster here. And in a way, they have a similar challenge: long distance flights without the possibility to fuel in between, to bunk in between. So there are certain synergies that we can use. And if Hamburg facilitates all these efforts and brings together this know-how, as it's already on course to do, then I think it will be a successful path for this maritime capital of Germany.
Okay.
I couldn't agree more. For us as well, missing profitability of hydrogen at present is one of the main obstacles. Because if you look at our industry, it's all long-running investments. And in order to make these investments, you need financing, you need a clear and reliable framework for this investment. And that's what we need. We need a perspective. And as I mentioned, not a short-term perspective for the next election period, but a long-term perspective of the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. And that would help most, I would say. And my wish for the city of Hamburg would be no half-in, half-out approach. If Hamburg discovers hydrogen is for a maritime capital, I take Dr. Lüken's word because I like it. It's important, go in. Go totally in, because these half-in, half-out only is a waste of time and resources, and just ensures that other ones are faster than we are. And that's not necessary, because here in Hamburg we have everything. We have good universities, we have logistic companies, we have the shipping, we have an industrial base, and a perfect surrounding for a good start and a sound development.
So, gentlemen, we heard the bell that you were ringing. Thank you for doing so and doing this in a very clear way. I do believe that Hamburg is positioned very well when it comes to hydrogen. We have a huge political commitment, but also, which is very important, we have demand in the different sectors, which may also help the maritime sector, be it hydrogen itself or its derivatives. You have made very clear, be it on the infrastructure side, or be it, let's say, on the framework, there need to be changes, but I do believe we already have done a first step. That may be a first step on quite a long way, but always a first step is a very good thing. And thank you for doing so, and really for your initiative for this first step. Thanks for today being with us, and I hope to hear from you soon regarding the next steps. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Many thanks.